Hey, tonight we're exploring something few people talk about, but everyone eventually experiences. You're lying still. Not just resting, completely still. There's no panic, no fear, just a long, slow exhale that never becomes an inhale again. The room doesn't know, the sky doesn't change. But inside your body, something shifts. The orchestra of biology that's kept you alive for decades quietly bows out. Your heart, once the steady drummer of your days, misses a beat, then another, and then it forgets entirely. Muscles soften. The warmth of your skin holds for a few minutes, like a ghost of who you were. Then, the edges blur. You probably won't survive this world unchanged, but that's the point. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you enjoy quiet stories like this. If you're still awake, tell us where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your body stops. Not in a dramatic way, not with a jolt or a scream, more like a curtain closing at the end of a long play. And in that first minute, everything is quiet, not just outside, but deep within. Doctors call it clinical death, when the heart stops beating and breathing ends. But that isn't quite the end. For a few precious minutes, some cells in your brain are still flickering. Neurons cling to their last traces of oxygen. There have been stories, well documented, of people brought back after 5, 10, even 20 minutes. They describe tunnels of light, sensations of floating, or simply nothing. Science hasn't figured out why or how. Some say it's electrical discharge. Others wonder if there's more. No one agrees. But this story isn't about near death. It's about what happens when there's no coming back. You've slipped past the tipping point. The first system to truly go silent is your nervous system. Without oxygen, brain activity flatlines. Signals that once coordinated every breath, twitch, and blink now fade into silence. Still, in rare cases, parts of the spinal cord fire one last time, sending stray impulses through the body. Fingers may curl, toes might flex. These are not signs of life. They're echoes, residual energy with nowhere left to go. Some cultures noticed this long before science caught up. In ancient Greece, bodies were watched closely for hours, just in case they stirred. Not from fear of the undead, but from respect for how slowly death unfolds. In modern times, forensic researchers know the body doesn't shut down like a light switch. It's more like a candle slowly losing its flame. And in those first 30 minutes, something else begins. Your body, once an elaborate heat engine, begins to cool. This is called algor mortis, the chill of death. You lose about 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit per hour, depending on where you are, what you're wearing, the air around you. But here's the eerie part. This cooling is so predictable, it can be used to estimate time of death with shocking precision. Imagine your skin cooling while the room stays the same. Your body surrendering its warmth slowly, like it's returning something borrowed. If you've ever touched a loved one shortly after they've passed, you might have felt it. The warmth still there, but slipping. It's quiet, unspeakably quiet. Then, deep inside your chest, the blood, no longer moved by the heart, begins to obey gravity. It's subtle at first. The blood settles in your back or your legs, depending on how you're lying. This is livor mortis, or hypostasis, a pooling of blood that creates purplish stains across the skin. They start faint, then darken. Sometimes they confuse doctors, mistaken for bruises. But no, this isn't violence. It's just physics. Gravity doesn't stop, even when you do. And still, deeper down, the story gets stranger. Your body is a colony. Right now, alive, your cells outnumber all other organisms. But in death, the bacteria, especially in your gut, begin to take over. Not yet. Not fully. But they're waking. Not with intention, but with opportunity. They've been waiting, in darkness, for the systems keeping them in check to fail. But that's for later. For now, it's still just silence, the kind that feels like fog, thick, unbroken. In 2019, a study from the University of Sydney made headlines. Researchers discovered human genes that activate hours after death, not just a few, hundreds. They call it the thanatotranscriptome, death's script. Why would cells turn on after everything else has stopped? No one knows. Some think it's the body trying to repair, even when it can't. Others believe it's just the final noise of systems winding down. But still, it's strange, isn't it? That even in death, there is activity. Tiny sparks in the dark, and so you lie still, skin cooling, signals fading. Cells, almost gently, beginning to fall apart. Not in fear, not in pain, just in release. You're not breathing, but you're still changing, and this is only the first hour. You're no longer moving, but gravity is. It doesn't care that your breath is gone or that your eyes have closed for the final time. It simply does what it has always done, pulling, settling, redistributing. Your blood, once coursing through arteries with purpose, now slips downward, as quietly as dust settling on a forgotten shelf. In the hours after death, this quiet rearrangement paints strange, ghost-like maps across your skin. It's called livor mortis, the purplish pooling of blood in the lowest parts of your body. If you're lying on your back, it gathers there. If you're on your side, it drifts differently. These stains are not bruises, though they sometimes look like them. Bruises come from trauma. These are simply the art of surrender. Investigators can often tell how someone died based on these patterns. Not just the time, but the position and whether a body has been moved. Science, it seems, is always reading what the body leaves behind, but you're not concerned with that now. You're just beginning to let go. Rigor mortis follows shortly after. The name sounds harsh, but the process is quiet, unfolding hour by hour like a ritual. Without energy to keep your muscles supple, the fibers begin to lock. Calcium floods the muscle tissue. ATP, your body's fuel, is gone. And without that fuel, the bridges between muscle filaments refuse to let go. You stiffen, your jaw first. Then your neck. Then your limbs curl into themselves like folded paper. By hour 6 or so, your body feels almost posed, rigid, unnatural. This is the part most people have heard of, but what they don't tell you is that it doesn't last. Rigor isn't permanent. After about 24 to 48 hours, the stiffness dissolves again. Why? Because deeper processes are beginning to win. Processes that have no master, only hunger and time. But we're not there yet. Let's stay here a little longer. It's been a few hours since the stillness began. The room hasn't changed, but your body is no longer the same. Internally, something called autolysis has quietly begun. Your own cells, no longer able to regulate themselves, start to break down. Enzymes leak from their compartments. They digest the cell from the inside out. It's a strange sort of undoing, not caused by any outside force, just the body folding in on itself. You are softly unraveling. Autolysis doesn't smell, it doesn't bruise, it doesn't shout, but it's the opening act for what comes next. Meanwhile, somewhere deeper, a forgotten bubble of air might escape your lungs, maybe through your throat, maybe through your mouth. A soft wheeze, a gentle croak. Nothing intentional, just mechanics. But to someone standing nearby, it might sound like breathing. There are stories, old and recent, of family members hearing their loved ones gasp after death. Not gasps of return, just the chest emptying itself. Air escaping muscle tension, a final whisper of the body. It's unsettling, yes, but it's not unnatural. In fact, some mortuary workers have grown so used to it they talk to the bodies. Thanks for that, they'll mutter, as if the body's final voice still deserved a listener. And maybe it does. Back in ancient Japan, there were beliefs that a body wasn't fully departed until 3 days had passed. Not for spiritual reasons alone, but because of what the body might still do. Twitch, moan, shift. Some scientists think it's because the spinal cord, protected and insulated, outlives the brain. It might keep firing tiny signals for hours, maybe longer. Imagine, lying still, breathless, and yet your fingers flex slightly. A toe curls, a shoulder shrugs. Not from will, but from memory, because muscles remember movement. They do not forget overnight. In 2013, forensic researchers in Australia set up a camera to film decomposition over time. What they didn't expect was motion, weeks after death. Arms moving slightly, legs shifting upward, bodies almost repositioning themselves. They called it post-mortem movement, not explained by insects or decay gases, just the body continuing to settle, even in death. The researchers were stunned. And yet, maybe it shouldn't be so surprising. The body is complex. It doesn't stop all at once. It stops slowly. Back inside you, cells are still breaking down. They aren't in pain. There's no suffering, only change. The organs go first. Your liver, rich in enzymes, begins to collapse. Then your kidneys, your pancreas, your stomach. Each dissolves, one by one, softened by the very fluids they once helped regulate. It's strangely poetic, a kind of biological humility. Organs returning themselves to the earth without drama. And all the while, the microbes, those ancient residents of your gut, are waiting. They're not predators, not monsters. They're just bacteria. Billions of them who lived alongside you for years, helping digest your meals, regulating your mood, shaping your immune system. And now they will shape your undoing. But that part hasn't fully begun yet. You're still in the early hours, cool to the touch, rigid in form, silent, mostly. Your body is a room that has just been emptied. The lights are off, the furniture remains, and in the corners, soft creaks whisper as it settles. There's no rush. Everything happens in order. The body is, after all, quite organized in its decay. But soon, the visitors will arrive. The ones that wake in the absence of control. The ones that bring color and change and motion of a very different kind. But we'll get there slowly, as always. You're still, not just in posture, but in purpose. Your body no longer serves a conscious mind. It's become something else now, a landscape. And like all landscapes, it will shift. Hours pass. The cool of algor mortis deepens. The muscles that once stiffened in rigor mortis have begun to yield again. You lie softer now. The body, relieved of its final tension, is returning to a kind of quiet fluidity. But something is changing. Under the skin, where once your blood flowed with pressure and urgency, now it has pooled. Dark stains bloom across your back, your shoulders, your limbs, depending on your position. These patterns, the signature of livor mortis, are slowly fixing in place. Within 12 hours, they're permanent. An accidental map of where gravity last touched you. And just beneath that stained skin, something is beginning to stir. It isn't dramatic. It doesn't scream or claw. It blooms. Inside your abdomen, your gut specifically, a community that's lived with you since birth begins to awaken. You know them. You felt them every time you digested a meal, every time your immune system stood guard. These are your gut bacteria. And now, with your immune system off, your gut becomes theirs. What begins is not a hostile takeover, but more of a quiet liberation. With no oxygen in the tissues, the environment becomes anaerobic, perfect for these microbes. They multiply fast. Their work is steady. They begin to digest your intestines from the inside out, a slow blooming of bacterial life, fed by your silence. It's called putrefaction, a word that conjures horror, but in truth is just nature's way of continuing. There's no intention in the decay, no judgment, only transformation. As bacteria multiply, they release gases, hydrogen sulfide, methane, ammonia, and others, with names you might recognize only from warning labels. These gases swell the body, particularly the abdomen, sometimes enough to shift your position, to lift an arm, to turn a head. It looks like motion, but it isn't yours anymore. Some cultures, long ago, saw this and mistook it for resurrection. They buried their dead shallow, watched in horror as bodies shifted, swelled, even groaned. They didn't have science. They only had fear. But science, too, finds itself bewildered sometimes. In rare cases, these postmortem gases become pressurized. They can push fluid from the lungs up into the throat, through the mouth or the nose. A red-tinged foam, faint and frothy. Mortuary workers call it purge fluid. Not beautiful, not elegant, but expected. Normal, even. It's the body's way of releasing what no longer belongs. And it doesn't end there. As the bacteria break down proteins in your tissues, color begins to emerge. A greenish tint, first in the lower abdomen, then spreading outward like ink in water. It's subtle at first, barely noticeable, then unmistakable. The green is caused by sulfhemoglobin, a compound that forms when hydrogen sulfide from bacteria reacts with the iron in your red blood cells. It's chemistry, but it looks like art. Slowly, as hours become days, this green turns to maroon, then to purple, and then, in some areas, to black. The body, once vibrant with blood and warmth, becomes a canvas of shadowed tones. Strange, but not frightening. There's a quiet dignity in the colors of decay, and alongside color comes texture. As the skin breaks down, it loosens. Blisters form. They fill with gas or fluid, and the outer layer of skin begins to slip. In forensics, this is called skin slippage, when the epidermis detaches from the dermis beneath. It sounds violent, but it isn't. It's soft, effortless, like the skin is simply letting go of its grip. In humid environments, this process accelerates. In dry climates, it slows. And in rare conditions, cold, arid, sealed spaces, it may stop almost entirely. Bodies have been recovered decades later, perfectly preserved by the stillness of their surroundings. But most of us will fade as we lived, gently, steadily, and with variation. Here's a quietly fascinating fact. Bacteria don't begin this work alone. Eventually, your own enzymes join in. Lipase digests fat. Protease breaks down protein. Amylase continues to break down carbohydrates, even hours after your last bite of food. Your body is, in effect, eating itself. And still, strangely, this process is efficient. In the 1700s, a scientist named Giovanni Battista Morgagni began the first serious study of decomposition. He noticed patterns, how organs liquefy in order, how temperature, moisture, and burial depth all played roles, and how even after death, the human body followed its own rules. Centuries later, forensic taphonomists still reference his work. But there are things Morgagni didn't know, things we still don't fully understand, like why some bodies decay faster than others, even in the same environment, why certain bacterial strains thrive while others vanish, and why, in rare cases, decomposition seems to pause without reason. Researchers still wonder if it's something in the DNA, a last trace of will, or just coincidence. And what of smell? It's there, yes, a byproduct of putrefaction. But not always immediate. Sometimes, in cold air or with quick burial, it takes time. The smell is complex, over 400 different compounds, blending into one unmistakable signature. Some forensic scientists can identify stages of decay by scent alone. They train dogs to do the same. But here in this moment, the smell is only beginning. A faint sweetness, maybe, a distant echo of meat and metal and dampness. It isn't scary. It's just the body exhaling everything it no longer needs. You don't fight it. You don't hold on. You simply change. The muscles no longer twitch. The stiffness has faded. The skin, the organs, the blood, they're all beginning to become something else. Not all at once, but soon, because this is only the beginning of what blooms in the dark. Your body, now a quiet vessel, continues its gentle unraveling. You've moved past the stillness, past the stiffening, and into something more fluid, a stage of release. Inside you, the tiny communities that once helped sustain life are now transforming it, undoing, digesting, transforming. But there's more than just stillness at work, because even now in death, your body moves. Not by will, not by thought, but by a kind of memory embedded in flesh. It begins subtly, a curl of the fingers, a slight flex of the calf, even a lifting of the arm. This phenomenon has startled many for centuries. Family members keeping vigil, medical students studying cadavers, funeral directors working alone late at night. They report movements, twitches, occasionally what appears to be a slow, final breath. It's known in forensic science as cadaveric spasm, or in rarer cases, reflexive post-mortem movement. A body, absent of consciousness, seems to perform small actions. It's not common, but it happens. Researchers aren't entirely sure why. Sometimes it's the final discharge of nervous energy in the spinal cord. Sometimes it's rigor unlocking in stages. Sometimes it's gas building within the abdomen or chest cavity, creating pressure, enough to shift the limbs. In one particularly eerie forensic case, a body was filmed over the course of 2 weeks. Scientists expected stillness. Instead, they watched as the arms moved, one rising slowly over days, then falling again, as if reaching for something and letting it go. But it wasn't haunting. It was natural. The body is never truly motionless. Even in stillness, it adjusts. Soft tissues loosen, muscles lengthen, gravity continues to apply itself, and gases, expanding within cavities, nudge what no longer resists. This stage is where decomposition becomes dynamic. Internally, pressure builds. Hydrogen sulfide, methane, carbon dioxide, all trapped inside your body like clouds in a balloon. Eventually, something gives. In the abdomen, the swelling is most visible, a distension of the belly, a tension under the skin. Sometimes enough pressure accumulates to lift the torso, even if only slightly, a slow arching of the back. No pain, no awareness, just the physics of internal change. In rare circumstances, if the jaw isn't secured, it may open wider, a slow drop, a hollow yawn into the air. Observers have described this as a scream, but it isn't. It's simply release. Your mouth, after all, is just a passageway now, and what escapes is not a voice, but a mixture of air and sometimes moisture. Purge fluid, we mentioned earlier, can also seep from the nostrils or eyes. It's part of the softening, the beginning of internal liquefaction. And while it might seem dramatic, in truth, it's quite slow, like fog spreading over a quiet lake. This is when your organs begin to lose their shape. It starts with the intestines, rich in bacteria. Then your liver, which collapses under its own enzymes. Your lungs, no longer inflating, begin to break down from the inside. A soft internal rain of disintegration. Your brain, too, begins to fade. Suspended in fluid, the brain is surprisingly delicate. Without oxygen, without circulation, the tissues begin to soften. After several days in humid conditions, the brain can liquefy entirely. Not from trauma, just from surrender. Here's something quietly fascinating. In some cases, when the skull is opened during an autopsy at this stage, the brain pours out, thick, opaque, almost like custard. For centuries, early physicians were puzzled by this. Some believed it was proof that the soul had evaporated. Others thought it meant disease had taken hold. But the truth is simpler. The brain, though mighty, is fragile. And when the systems that protect it are gone, it yields like all else. But while the inside is becoming liquid, the outside tells a different story. Skin slippage becomes more widespread now. The outer layer detaches. Your fingerprints may begin to peel off. In forensic labs, technicians sometimes remove this skin carefully, like a glove, so they can place it on their own hand and take a clear set of prints. It sounds macabre, but it's practical and oddly reverent, because even in death, your body holds information, clues, patterns, stories, and sometimes identity. Meanwhile, the green tints deepen. Mottled patterns crawl up your sides. Your belly may appear marbled, veins becoming pronounced under thinning skin. There's even a name for this pattern, marbling. It looks like fine art, dark purples and blues branching like rivers beneath translucent parchment. It's caused by the bacteria traveling through your veins, producing gas as they go. Tiny highways of microbial bloom. In medieval times, this appearance was seen as unnatural. Some believed it meant witchcraft. Others took it as a sign that the soul was trapped. But really, it's just bacteria following the paths the blood once traveled. Order replacing order, and still, you are not gone. Not fully. Your body remains in transition, changing shape, changing color, changing form, from solid to soft, from tension to collapse. But none of it is sudden. Nothing in nature rushes the process of return. Your body has always known how to dissolve. It's written into your cells, into your marrow, into every strand of DNA. You just never needed it until now. And this is only the beginning of the journey toward the most delicate part of your undoing. Not your skin, not your organs, but the space between, where textures melt, where fluids collect, where form becomes memory, and memory eventually becomes earth. By now, your body is no longer something fixed. It shifts quietly under its own weight. Parts of you are softening, sagging, returning, not just to the earth, but to fluid. You are entering a stage that forensic scientists call active decay. But the word active might be misleading. It doesn't rush. It doesn't tear. It unfolds like something long planned. Inside your abdomen, the pressure continues to build. The gases from bacterial activity stretch your skin. In warm environments, this swelling can be dramatic. The body becomes rounder, tighter, even unnaturally smooth, like a balloon filled just to the edge of bursting. But bursting is rare. Most of the time, the skin simply finds its weak point, a seam, a pore, a healing wound. And there, slowly, the fluids begin to escape. This is the beginning of liquefaction. Not all at once, not like a melting block of ice, but more like thawing, layer by layer. Your organs, especially those rich in moisture, begin to collapse. The pancreas, the lungs, the liver, they lose their structure, giving way to a thick, syrupy texture. These fluids mix with bacterial byproducts. What results is a rich, dark seepage, sometimes greenish, sometimes brown, often called decomp fluid. Mortuary workers expect this. They line caskets with absorbent materials. Hospice nurses may place pads beneath patients before death, knowing what comes next. It's not unpleasant, not in the way people imagine. There's no shriek, no suddenness, only quiet release, a body letting go of shape. And it's not just organs. Even the spaces between organs begin to soften. Tissue separating the heart from the lungs, the liver from the stomach. These boundaries dissolve. You become less segmented, less compartmentalized. Everything is blending now. This, in forensic terms, is colliquative liquefaction, the progressive breakdown of soft tissues into fluid. And it's here that your appearance begins to change dramatically. Your face, once tense in death, begins to flatten. The lips darken, the cheeks sink, the eyes, already cloudy, may collapse inward. The tongue swells, then softens. Your features become strange, unfamiliar. For some, this is where the body begins to feel truly gone. Because recognition fades. You no longer resemble a photograph, no longer echo a memory. Instead, you begin to resemble something older, something before identity. And still, it continues. The skin, especially in moist areas, begins to detach entirely. On the hands and feet, this happens first. Fingernails loosen. The outer layer of the skin, the epidermis, sloughs off like paper. In cases where the body is submerged in water, this effect is even more pronounced. Pathologists call it washerwoman's skin, a wrinkled, blanched layer that slips off in sheets. You might have seen the earliest form of it after a long bath, but this version goes deeper, more complete. Some believe this softening is beautiful in its way, a sign that the body is releasing everything superficial. Only the essential remains. And here's something quietly fascinating. Your body is changing temperature again, not because it's generating heat, those days are over, but because the bacteria inside you are. The process of putrefaction is exothermic. It releases heat. In large corpses or in sealed environments, temperatures can rise by several degrees. In fact, in some documented cases, the interior of a decomposing body was warmer than the air around it, even days after death. A strange inversion, the body heating up as it dissolves. Researchers don't fully understand the full implications. It complicates time of death estimations, and it suggests that the end of life doesn't mean the end of biochemical energy. Even now, your body is its own furnace, fueled by bacteria, warmed by decay. And outside, things begin to notice. Flies, mostly, drawn not to death, but to the promise of it. Female blowflies are among the first to arrive. Within hours, sometimes minutes, they lay eggs, often in the moist corners of the body. The nose, the eyes, the mouth, open wounds, hundreds at a time. And those eggs, they hatch within 24 hours. Tiny white larvae emerge, maggots searching blindly for soft tissue. Their job isn't chaos, it's cleanup. They consume what bacteria can't reach quickly. They speed the process, clearing the way for skeletonization. You're not alone, even now. You've become an ecosystem. One cadaver can support dozens of insect species over time. Beetles follow flies, mites follow beetles. Waves of visitors, each with a role, each contributing to your disassembly. In forensic entomology, these insects are used to calculate how long you've been gone. Each species arrives at a known interval. Their life cycles are clockwork, so your body becomes a timeline, a living record of its own fading. And yet, it's not violent, not grotesque. It's methodical, almost tender. In some cultures, this stage is honored. Tibetan sky burials, for instance, welcome nature's role in the undoing. Bodies are laid out for scavenging birds. The belief is that the body is no longer needed, and returning it to the earth fully and freely is a final act of generosity. Western funerary traditions are more hidden, but even embalming, even sealing only delays what is inevitable, because nature remembers, and your body was always in some quiet way on loan. Now it is being returned, drip by drip, drop by drop. Fluid gathers beneath you. Your clothing, if any, soaks through. The linen stain, the floor perhaps darkens, but no one watches. The room is still, and so are you. But inside, you are motion. You are chemistry. You are transformation, continuing quietly. And slowly, what once was you begins to fade into something else. Not quite earth, not yet skeleton, but no longer body. The stillness around you deepens. But inside, your body is still humming in its own quiet language. A language not spoken in words, but in pressure and release. You've entered a strange in-between, a moment suspended between form and formlessness. You are no longer entirely a body, but not yet bones. And now, from within the abdomen, a soft tension continues to rise. Gases, hydrogen sulfide, methane, ammonia, build relentlessly. Not from you, but from the bacteria who have made you their home. They move deeper now, past the gut, into the chest, the face, even the limbs. Your body, slowly swelling from the inside, becomes something unfamiliar. The belly distends, round and tight. The eyelids puff. The cheeks balloon. Your face, once sharp or soft, becomes strangely symmetrical. This is not deformity. This is simply pressure. For those who discover bodies in this phase, it's often described as startling, a kind of grotesque inflation. But you, within this story, are beyond perception. You feel none of it. There is no discomfort, no awareness, just the expansion of things that no longer need to be held in. In sealed environments, like caskets or plastic body bags, this pressure can't escape. It grows. Sometimes enough to rupture tissue, rarely enough to split the skin, or force open the mouth, expelling what's left in the stomach. Forensic pathologists prepare for this, the groan of escaping gas, the hiss of a body venting. It's not alive, but it sounds alive. There have been documented cases, Nurses in hospice care, morgue attendants, even crime scene workers who have heard what they believed were last breaths. Not imagined, not mystical, just the slow push of gas the vocal cords, creating sound in the absence of life. It's unnerving, but it's also expected. The body remembers sound, and now it lets sound go. Here's something quietly fascinating. In the early 20th century, some researchers claimed to measure a weight loss at the moment of death. Exactly 21 grams. They believed it was the soul, leaving. The experiment has long been discredited, but the image lingers because we like to think something departs, that a breath carries meaning, that the exhale is more than just gas. But here, in this moment, you are all mechanics, physics, biology, release. As pressure increases, your tissues soften even more. In moist, warm conditions, skin may blister. Some of these blisters can grow large, taut with fluid. They rupture easily, and beneath the surface, your blood vessels begin to collapse. Not in violence, just in surrender. This creates an eerie effect. The skin, no longer fed by blood, turns translucent, and then darkens, first to green, then to black, especially around the fingers, toes, and nose. These are the places with the least muscle, the most exposure. It's called black putrefaction. To some, it looks like rot. To others, it looks like the body returning to shadow, 1 inch at a time. In this phase, fluids continue to leak, not just from wounds or orifices, but from the skin itself. Small tears, sweat glands, even the folds where skin once flexed and moved. You are no longer containing yourself, and as fluids leave, others arrive. Insects, again. Drawn to the scent of decay, which by now has intensified. The air is thick with it, especially in still, humid rooms. Blowflies swarm first, then flesh flies, then beetles, dermestids, who prefer dry, tougher tissues. And where insects go, scavengers follow. Rats, cats, even dogs, if they are left without food and enough time passes. It's not cruelty, it's hunger, it's instinct. There are documented cases, haunting but natural, of pets consuming their deceased owners, often starting with the face, the softest, most accessible parts. It's a strange mercy. Nature never wastes, and you are part of nature again. Meanwhile, your body continues to collapse in on itself. Gas escapes, liquids drain, you flatten, folds deepen, limbs sink into bedding or earth, your spine curves forward. It's as if you're curling inward, preparing to vanish. And somewhere in this collapse, an even stranger process begins. Mummification. In dry environments, decay takes a different path. Without moisture, bacteria can't function as easily. Instead of liquefying, your tissues dry out, they tighten, shrink. Skin becomes leathery, brown, brittle, eyes cave in, the tongue hardens. You don't melt, you preserve. This can happen in deserts, but also in homes with strong airflow or places with low humidity. Even in urban apartments, there are stories of people found years later perfectly mummified, still dressed, still in bed, still clutching a book or a pillow. The air had simply dried them into stillness. This is rare, but not impossible. More commonly, your decay follows the wet path, slippery, soft, and complete. In either case, your body is approaching a threshold, the stage where organs have liquefied, where the skin has darkened, where bone becomes visible beneath the wreckage, and yet you are still present, in shape, in shadow, in silhouette. Researchers still wonder about this stage. Why do some bodies skip steps? Why do some preserve unexpectedly? Why do some vanish quickly, while others linger? They don't know. Perhaps it's the bacteria. Perhaps it's something in the air. Perhaps it's something we aren't meant to measure. But here, in this quiet, bloated, strange in-between, you are changing faster now. The pressure has peaked, the fluids have mostly drained. And what comes next is what you've been slowly approaching since the moment you let go. Bone. Not yet bare, but beginning to appear beneath the folds. It waits, as it always has. The last of the swelling has passed. The gases once trapped beneath your skin have mostly vented through pores, through ruptures, through soft openings. You're no longer ballooned or bloated. Now, you're beginning to collapse. Your body flattens, sunken in the middle, curled slightly at the edges. Your spine bows toward the surface beneath you, mattress, floor, soil, or stone. And in this folding in, something begins to emerge. Not dramatically, not suddenly, but gently, quietly, like old stone revealed beneath melting snow. Bone. Your skin, thinned by bacteria, blisters, and time, begins to tear in wider places. The tissues around joints, elbows, knees, fingers, have dissolved enough that shape gives way. Where muscles once held tension and curves, now there are shadows, hollows. And through those hollows, white emerges. Not the bleached white you might imagine. At first, bones are soft yellow, sometimes stained brown or green by fluids. They're not dry yet. They're still wrapped in the dampness of decay. But they are visible. Cheekbones, rib ends, knuckles. And for the first time since this began, your structure reintroduces itself. The scaffolding beneath the softness. You are becoming skeletal. This is the beginning of advanced decay, a stage where the body, for all its changes, is still recognizably human, but only in pieces. Soft tissues are patchy now. Some parts liquefied completely, others dried into strips. It depends on your environment. In the forest, exposure to sun and insects would have accelerated things. In water, things might have softened faster but lingered longer. In cold air, change would have crept like frost, delayed but not denied. And here's a quietly fascinating fact. In some conditions, especially burial, the body forms something called adipocere, also known as corpse wax. It's a gray-white, waxy substance made when fat in the body, especially from the thighs and cheeks, breaks down in a wet, low-oxygen environment. Soap-like, waxy, strangely smooth to the touch. Adipocere preserves. It can hold the shape of muscles, even facial features, for years. In some cases, bodies exhumed after a decade still wore expressions. Frozen in silence, softened but not erased. Scientists still don't fully understand the formation of adipocere. Sometimes it appears, sometimes it doesn't. Temperature, moisture, bacteria, all play a role, but it's not consistent. And perhaps that's part of the wonder, because even in death, your body remains unpredictable. Each person decays in their own way, some fast, some slow, some leave behind outlines, others puzzles. No two bodies tell the same story. At this point, your internal organs are almost entirely gone. The heart, stomach, lungs, dissolved or drained. The brain, once the crown jewel of consciousness, has collapsed into a soft, dark sludge inside the skull. And yet the skull itself holds firm. Bone doesn't surrender easily. It resists insects. It resists water. It resists time, at least for a while. And now it begins to emerge. Maybe the scalp has peeled away. Maybe the eyes have dried and shrunk. Maybe the jaw has sagged, falling open. The skull becomes visible. First, just hints of it, along the brow, beneath the cheek, at the chin. Then more. To the observer, you are no longer recognizable. You've slipped past familiarity. But to science, you've become legible. Anthropologists can read your bones like a diary. They can tell your age, your height, your sex. In some cases, they can see your habits, signs of arthritis, healed fractures, lost teeth. Even the way your muscles once pulled against bone leaves tiny etchings, called entheses, on your skeleton. You're gone, but your form still speaks. And yet, for all this visibility, you're also becoming part of something bigger. Because at this stage, the final wave of decomposition arrives. Drying. Everything that's not already gone begins to desiccate. Tendons shrink into threads, ligaments curl and snap. Cartilage, like the tips of your nose or ears, becomes brittle. What's left begins to crack. Your bones, once supported by muscle, now rest unevenly. Without padding, they grind softly against stone or cloth or soil. And depending on the humidity, they may begin to split. Not into dust, not yet. But tiny fractures spread like spider webs through the surface, especially in the skull. The frontal bone, the part of your forehead, sometimes caves slightly, not from force, just from emptiness. And as this happens, the insects begin to fade. There's nothing left for them here. The flies move on. The beetles leave. Even the microbes slow their work. You are no longer a feast. You are a relic, a pause, a whisper. There is a stage called skeletonization. It doesn't begin with a sudden shift. It's gradual. It starts the moment bone peeks through, and it continues now. Ligaments may still cling to joints. Strands of muscle may resist decay in colder places. But you are mostly bone, mostly framework, and the earth begins to reclaim you. Soil seeps in through open spaces. Moss may find purchase on exposed surfaces. Insects nest in your ribs. Roots tangle your feet. And here's something quiet and unexpected. Your bones change color. At first they are yellow or ivory from the fat and marrow inside. But over time, exposure to air and soil changes them. They may become brown or green if copper is nearby. Sometimes even blue if mold finds its way inside the marrow. Your skeleton is no longer just a structure. It's becoming a canvas. And one day, soon or far, you'll no longer be whole. Bones separate. The spine unravels. The ribs collapse. The jaw falls away. No drama, just time. Your body has done what it was always meant to do. return, piece by piece. You're nearly gone now. But gone isn't really the right word, is it? Your body remains, just not as a self, not as you once knew it. It's something simpler now, and something older. The bones lie where they've settled, softened by time, no longer stark white, no longer wet with what once was life, just pale shapes resting in the quiet, a still constellation. Over time, they lose their precision. Your rib cage, once strong and curved like a shield, begins to collapse. Vertebrae separate, joints loosen, and what once held your body together begins to let go. Gravity and erosion do what life no longer can. Ligaments, long dried, snap with a whisper. Bones roll subtly from where they once anchored. Your arm falls away from your side. Your spine bends into strange, broken arcs. No rush, just the slow slide into fragmentation. And soon the insects return, but not for you. They come to live among you. Beetles nest between your ribs. Spiders curl under your pelvis. Tiny larvae rest in the hollow of your skull. You are no longer decomposing. You are habitat. And still, your transformation continues. Here's something quietly fascinating. Your teeth often outlast everything else. While skin slips, while bone wears down, your teeth remain. Their enamel is the hardest substance in the human body. It resists time, it resists water, it resists decay longer than almost anything else you leave behind. Anthropologists have used teeth to estimate the age of children found thousands of years after burial. Even diet can be determined from the wear. Microscopic scratches reveal the kinds of food you once ate. Grains leave different marks than meat. Fibrous vegetables leave patterns of their own. In some cases, the teeth even contain trapped isotopes that tell scientists where you lived, what kind of water you drank, what kind of air you breathed. So even now, long after your voice has gone silent, your teeth are still talking. And slowly, everything else begins to vanish. If you rest above ground, rain softens you. Wind carries dust from your bones. Leaves settle on your form. Seasons move across you like hands. If you rest below ground, microbes continue their patient work. Roots grow through the spaces between your vertebrae. Moles dig tunnels by your limbs. The soil compacts. Your body flattens. And sometimes, surprisingly, plants bloom. There are stories, half folklore, half truth, of flowers growing more vibrant above graves. The soil, enriched with nitrogen, feeds their roots. Your body, once breathing, now nourishes something else. It's not resurrection. It's not redemption. It's just the cycle, unbroken, uneven, but beautiful. And still, there are secrets, because even now, we don't know how long this will last. Some bones disappear in a few years. Others last for centuries. Buried under the right conditions, dry, dark, stable, they can endure almost unchanged. But even then, molecules break down. Calcium leaches away. The marrow, if any remains, turns to dust. Eventually, even the shape of your bones blurs. Edges round off. Hollows fill in. Your skeleton becomes less human, more stone-like. And after that, there's a phenomenon called diagenesis. It's the chemical and physical alteration of bone after burial. Over decades, centuries, sometimes millennia, your bones react with the soil around them. They absorb minerals, they crystallize, they fossilize, or disintegrate. One day, someone may dig in the earth and find fragments of you. A tooth, part of a femur, a single vertebra. Maybe they'll analyze it, maybe they'll hold it, or maybe they'll leave it, not knowing who or what it once belonged to. And perhaps that's how it should be, because even now, in pieces and particles, you are still returning to the dirt, to the wind, to the water that seeps and flows and carries the tiniest trace of you into rivers, oceans, clouds. You once breathed the world. Now the world breathes you. There is no final moment, no clean end, only this, the soft undoing of form, the long, slow retreat from structure. Even your bones forget themselves eventually. They become porous, they crumble, they scatter, and what remains isn't you. It's everything else, the soil you fed, the insects you supported, the moss you made space for, the seeds you nourished, the strange stillness you helped create. You are no longer here, but your absence has shape and it echoes, not loudly, not forever, but gently, like dust settling after a breath. You are almost memory now, not a person, not quite remains, something in between, a whisper in the soil, a shape once held, now slipping into everything. Your bones, already brittle, rest in fragments. Wind, water, and time have touched them, slowly grinding, weathering, softening. Edges dull, surfaces powder, tiny cracks become hollows, and soon they won't be bones anymore. They'll be particles, grains of calcium phosphate, flakes of mineral, dust. It takes decades for this to happen fully, sometimes longer. But the process is inevitable, especially if you rest near water. Rains seep through, groundwater wicks minerals away. Your skeleton begins to dissolve from within, a silent unraveling, and all the while the world forgets your shape. But even now, you are part of things. Soil enriched by your decay supports new life. Insects lay eggs in the dark loam where your chest once rose and fell. A seed, dropped by the wind or a passing bird, finds its way into that same soil and grows. A blade of grass, a wildflower, a tree. Its roots push gently through what's left of your ribs. They wrap around your vertebrae like quiet fingers. Not to disturb, but to anchor. You've become a scaffold for life. There is something quietly fascinating about this transformation. Your carbon, once part of living tissue, is now part of the plant. Your nitrogen fuels its leaves. The water you once held rises into the sky as vapor. And in this way, you re-enter the world. Not as a ghost, not as memory, but as matter. Maybe a deer grazes the grass grown from your soil. Maybe a child plucks a flower, unaware. Maybe rain falls on the roots you fed, soaking deep, pulling your last molecules upward. You are gone, but not vanished. You are redistributed. In the natural world, nothing is ever lost, only changed, only moved. Even the parts we don't see, the atoms inside you, carry on. They drift into groundwater. They dissolve into air. They rest inside the belly of a beetle, or the stem of a sapling, or the wing of a passing moth. And slowly, without effort, without control, you've become a part of everything. There's a term in forensic anthropology, total skeletonization. It means that all soft tissue is gone. Nothing remains but bone. And soon, even that breaks down. But there is no term for what happens after. When bone turns to dust, when dust turns to earth, when earth grows roots, science ends its labels there. But your story doesn't, because the world holds on, even to the smallest pieces. Think of this. The calcium in your bones could someday settle in the ocean, and from there become the shell of a mollusk, or part of a coral reef, or the outer layer of a tiny sea creature drifting in plankton. Your atoms, each one, continue. They aren't static. They aren't sacred. They cycle. You might one day be part of a mountain, a wave, a starling's wing. We talk about ashes to ashes, dust to dust. But the truth is, there is no dust, only rearrangement. Even your DNA, once the blueprint of you, breaks down. But not all at once. Some of it lingers for centuries. Fragments remain in teeth, in dense bone. Archaeologists sometimes recover these fragments and decode them. Thousands of years later, they reconstruct stories from the tiniest biological clues. From a sliver of femur, they can tell your ancestry. From a molar, your likely migration path. From chemical traces, the minerals you drank, the metals you carried, the foods you favored. You thought your voice was gone, but your bones can still speak, even after silence, even after scatter. But time continues. And with enough of it, even DNA forgets its shape. The helix unspools, the strands break, you are no longer code, just carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and the occasional echo of phosphorus, iron, magnesium, elements that once formed your muscles, your blood, your thoughts. They return to the shared pool. And someone else, years or centuries from now, might breathe a molecule that once lived in your lungs. Drink from a spring fed by rains that pass through your earth. Sleep under a tree that holds your calcium in its core. There's no need to be remembered, not in the way people think. Because even unremembered, you are present. You were never meant to last in one shape. You were meant to become many things. A soft field, a dark cloud, a hidden stream. And in this quiet unraveling, there is peace. Not in the forgetting, but in the returning. You've left behind nothing and everything. There's not much of you left in one place anymore. Not a body, not even a full skeleton. Just traces, particles, minerals, flecks of dust beneath layers of time. And yet, strangely, you are more present now than ever, because you're no longer contained, no longer shaped by skin or name or memory. You've become diffuse, scattered by wind, absorbed by root, carried by rain. A whisper in the humus of a forest floor, a shimmer in the sediment of a stream, a part of things without needing to be the center of them. This phase, the final dispersal, doesn't have a clear beginning and no real end. Some of your calcium might still hold out, caught in the compact core of your femur, but much of it has already moved on. Some drifted with rainwater, some fed insects, some transformed under pressure into different mineral forms entirely. The soil around where you once lay has changed too. Scientists studying grave sites often find elevated levels of phosphates and nitrates. These markers tell them someone was here, and something grew from it, but even those markers fade. Over time, the signature of your presence is overwritten by worms, by roots, by weather. The earth forgets your exact shape and embraces something else instead, continuity. This is the point where your remains are no longer distinguishable from the world. They are the world. And something quietly fascinating happens here. You become anonymous again, not in the way we fear, unloved, unremembered, but in the way all natural things eventually are. The way rain doesn't remember where it fell. The way sunlight touches every leaf without knowing which ones it touched before. This anonymity is not loss, it's freedom. You are no longer bound to a single story. You've become part of every story. This phase defies measurement. Scientists call it taphonomic equilibrium, a fancy term for the point at which a body is completely broken down and nothing of it remains biologically recognizable. It could take years, decades, centuries. It depends on your resting place. A dry cave in the mountains might preserve parts of you for millennia. A shallow grave in wet soil might see you gone in less than a decade. Left above ground in the right climate, your timeline is counted in months. But no matter the speed, the ending is the same. Not obliteration, not disappearance, just merging. If someone were to walk through the place you once occupied, they might pause. Feel the air. Notice the rich soil. Maybe they'd pick a wildflower from that spot. Or rest beneath a tree whose roots once traced your ribs. They wouldn't know. They wouldn't need to. Because you're still there, in ways that no eye can trace. And here's another quiet curiosity. In this state of complete dispersal, you've reached something very close to the beginning. The very atoms that built your body, hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, those are ancient, billions of years old, formed in stars, forged in the cores of suns that burned long before Earth ever cooled. And now, you've returned to that. You are matter again, free of identity, free of weight, free to cycle into new forms, just like you once did, unknowingly, before you were born. The calcium in your bones might someday become part of limestone, compressed and layered, folded by the Earth itself, until you're locked into stone. Or those molecules might travel through rain into a river and into an ocean. They might settle into coral or drift for centuries, invisible in the sea. You don't get to choose, but you do continue. And maybe that's enough. Not as a soul watching from above, not as a memory echoing forever, but as an ingredient in whatever comes next. You might even feed fire someday. A tree nourished by your nutrients might fall, dry, and burn in a forest blaze. Your atoms lifted again into smoke, carried on wind, sifting through cities, hills, valleys, softly landing on distant shores. There's no script for this. No map, just release. And researchers still wonder, is there ever a true end to human remains? Or just endless transformation? Even when bones have turned to dust? Even when cells have been scattered, can some part of you be traced? Some think no, that decay is complete, that once structure is lost, all is forgotten. But others suspect that traces linger longer than we know, in soil, in air, in memory, not the kind held by people, but the kind held by nature. Because nature, unlike us, doesn't separate the past from the present. It folds time into layers, one atop another, each feeding the next, and in that slow layering you remain, not as an individual, not even as a name, but as a presence, a color in the stone, a softness in the earth, a whisper of minerals beneath the feet of strangers who will never know you were once here. But that's okay, because you've done what all things eventually must do. You've dissolved into everything. By now, your presence has become more suggestion than structure, more vibration than volume. You've moved past what could ever be called a body, past decay, past even death itself. You are something far simpler now, material in motion, not moving as a whole, but as many, many pieces, each one small enough to pass unnoticed, each one drifting, absorbed, reused. This isn't something we often imagine. We think of endings as abrupt, bodies buried, ashes scattered, doors closing, but your ending was never a door. It was a window, a slow, foggy pane through which you've been evaporating. Not out, but across. Your calcium has seeped deep into the soil. Plants have pulled it upward. Their fruit may carry it now. A berry ripened from the memory of your bones. Or a seed pod growing heavy thanks to the phosphorus once locked inside your cells. In time, that fruit might be eaten by a bird, by a deer, by a passing human. And just like that, You are inside life again. Maybe not for long, maybe not remembered, but included. This is one of the soft truths of nature. Nothing gets left behind, not permanently, not completely. Even your water, the moisture once held in every cell of your body, has rejoined the hydrologic cycle, evaporated from wet soil, risen into the sky, condensed into a droplet, fallen again as rain, over and over. Some molecules that once flowed through your veins may now be soaking into the roots of an old tree, or traveling down a mountainside stream, or hanging in the mist that touches a stranger's face on a quiet morning. Your breath, in its final sigh, has long since blended with the atmosphere, diluted into invisibility, but still there, still moving. Scientists have done the math. Because air mixes so thoroughly across the globe, it's almost certain that each of us inhales a few molecules of Julius Caesar's last breath with every inhale, or Cleopatra's, or the breath of a child who lived and died 10,000 years ago. So too are you now distributed, inhaled, shared, untraceable, and still real. There's something quietly beautiful about that. You've left the domain of memory, but not the domain of matter. And for all the uncertainty we have about what happens after we die, this much is sure. Your atoms continue. The universe doesn't forget them. They are not lost, just repurposed. You may become part of the skeleton of a bird, or the shell of a crab, or the chitin of a beetle scuttling through a rainforest. You may rest for centuries in the core of a tree, or drift in ocean currents for thousands of miles. You may someday even be reabsorbed into another human being. Not in some mystical way, but literally. Through air, through food, through water. The idea that we are all made of stardust is more than poetry. It's physics. Every atom in your body, hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, was once part of something else. A planet, a tree, an animal, another person. Now, those atoms are being returned. And if they were borrowed before, they are being borrowed again. This stage, this final one, isn't about endings. It's about blending. There's no longer a line between where you end and the rest of the world begins. There's just motion. Diffusion, soft inclusion. Your thoughts are gone, your memories have faded, no personality remains, but the building blocks that made you still move through the world, still participate. And isn't that a kind of survival? A quiet, molecular immortality. Not the kind that stories tell, not fame or legacy or consciousness beyond the grave, but a subtler kind, a material kind. The kind that touches a leaf, rests in a stream, floats through fog, settles in sand. Your remains have no center now, no fixed location. You are everywhere, in small, unmeasurable ways. And researchers still wonder about this phase. Not because they hope to stop it, but because they want to understand it better, to know how long traces can linger, to know what the Earth chooses to keep and what it lets pass on. But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe it's not what remains. Maybe it's where. Because you don't remain in one place. You've become a part of places. And those places remember you, not as a face, not as a name, but as part of their soil, their air, their warmth. And maybe one quiet night, as wind stirs through trees you helped grow, something will shift. A branch will sway, a petal will fall, a ripple will move across a pond, and that will be your final echo. Still soft, still quiet, still here. By now, you are indistinguishable from the world that holds you. Not a body, not a thing, just substance, everywhere. There is no more decay, because there's nothing left to decay. No more breakdown, because all that could break has already yielded. What remains is matter in its most peaceful state, settled. And yet, that's not the end of motion. Because even settled things are drawn into slow currents. The earth moves in layers. Rain erodes. Rivers carry silt. Wind lifts specks and drifts them into new places. And those specks, some of them are you. Maybe a particle of your calcium has made it into the bed of a creek. It tumbles quietly between pebbles, worn smooth over decades. One day it gets pressed into a sediment layer, buried, compressed, folded by tectonics. In a few million years, it's limestone, a solid memory, not of your life, but of your structure. It will sit in cliffs and cave walls, waiting to be found. And long after, perhaps, someone will break a piece off, crush it, heat it, mix it into cement, and suddenly you are part of a building, a wall, a bridge, a foundation. Not by choice, just by physics. It's strange, isn't it? That something as small as your atoms can travel so far from their origins. That what once was breath and thought and memory becomes infrastructure. But that's the world. It doesn't keep things in one form. It reuses. Here's a quietly fascinating idea. If the universe continues to expand, then eventually all matter will move so far apart that decay itself will stop. They call it heat death, the point at which even entropy loses momentum. At that scale, your atoms might rest forever. But that's beyond time, beyond meaning. For now, you are still cycling. And if your journey doesn't end in rock, it may continue in fire. Because even long-dead trees fall, and sometimes they burn. Maybe your carbon fed a forest. Maybe that forest kindled a wildfire, and in the slow orange breath of combustion, you rose again. Smoke lifts everything, and it never asks where you came from. So now your molecules swirl in air. They glide above oceans. They drift over mountaintops, invisible, unbound. They settle again into rain clouds, snowbanks, warm updrafts, frozen storms, and maybe somewhere they fall again, touching a child's skin, or the surface of a distant leaf, or a window pane in a city far from where your life began. That's the quiet miracle of non-existence. It isn't truly gone. It's just not contained, not named, not claimed, but always present. You're past the stage where science has definitions. There are no more forensic terms for you. No labels like skeletal remains or soft tissue. You're just background now, a contributor to the scene, unseen but essential. And yet, even here there's mystery, because while matter continues, consciousness doesn't. Not that we know of. The brain, soft and electrical, collapsed long ago. Its pathways dissolved, its sparks extinguished. There's no evidence that anything of you survived. No memory, no thought, no watching soul. But some still wonder. They point to quantum uncertainty, to consciousness as an emergent property, to things we still don't understand about time, entropy, perception. Maybe there is no soul, or maybe it's just dispersed too. Broken apart like everything else, no longer a flame, but a mist. Untraceable, but not meaningless. It's comforting in a strange way. To imagine that your awareness melted into the fabric of the universe, that every sleeping hill, every falling petal, every cold current of deep ocean might carry some unmeasurable part of you. And so you rest, not in place, but in participation. You are no longer a person. You are no longer even a name. You are part of what makes everything else possible. And no one will know. No one has to. The world is full of things it doesn't remember. That doesn't mean it stops loving them. You have become one of those things, essential, forgotten, alive, in a new and formless way. There's no traceable outline of you now, no skull beneath the earth, no tooth left to analyze, no structure for the wind to brush against. And yet, your absence is not a void. It's a distribution, a spreading out so wide, so fine, so natural, that you're in places no one would think to look. Not hidden, exactly. Just thoroughly blended. In the moss that grows against an old brick wall, in the breath of a squirrel darting through leaf fall, in the stillness of the air just before dawn. Nothing remains of your voice, but the air still moves where your lungs once rose. Nothing remains of your heart, but the carbon it held is pulsing now through other things. You are not alive. You are in life. And maybe that's what we get in the end. Not reincarnation, not consciousness, not even legacy, really, but continuation. Particles in new cycles, atoms in new structures, energy folded into different work. Because even after decay, even after dispersal, your presence touches systems far beyond your body. Here's something quietly remarkable. Insects that fed on you may have gone on to pollinate flowers. Flowers that fed fruit. Fruit that fed mammals. And mammals, well, they continue the story in their own ways. So even now you influence things you'll never meet. There are oak trees that draw their nutrients from cemeteries. Mushrooms that bloom brighter above old graves. Water tables laced with the trace minerals of lives long past. And when the rain falls, it carries tiny whispers of the past across valleys, into gutters, into ocean foam, into everything. Your body, once so solid and distinct, is now porous memory, and still the transformation continues. Dust settles, soil compacts. What's left of you, chemically, is absorbed even deeper into the geologic layers. Your particles become indistinguishable from the rock, and so, after being part of breath and blood and bone, you may become part of stone. Over centuries, sediments press down, layers build, time fuses. You become a part of strata, a quiet stripe in a canyon wall, a layer of silt in the bottom of a lake. And if someone, 1,000 years from now, cuts into that stone, they may find a faint chemical trace. Something strange, something that hints once this was part of someone, but they won't know your name, or your face, or your dreams, just that you were. And for most things in nature, that's more than enough. The universe doesn't seek permanence. It embraces transition. And if you ever doubt that, just look at the sky. The carbon in your body, every part of you that once formed cells and skin, was forged in a star, billions of years ago, long before Earth even existed. That carbon drifted through space, gathered in clouds, pressed into planet, and eventually into you. And now, it's begun its return. Not back into stars, not yet, but back into motion, back into open cycles. You're part of the carbon cycle again, moving through air, water, life. Not in a circle, not in a line, in a spiral, wide, interwoven, unstoppable. And researchers still wonder, if this process, this long, slow reintegration, is why some cultures feel a deep connection to the land of their ancestors. Because even without memory, even without names, the matter remains, in the fields, in the rivers, in the dust that settles over generations. And maybe we feel that, even if we don't understand it. Maybe the Earth really does carry our presence in ways science hasn't fully mapped yet. Not spiritually, but materially, molecule by molecule, leaf by leaf. And so you pass into the long, soft anonymity of the planet itself. Not marked, not mapped, but blended. You are not what you were, but you are not gone. You're simply here, everywhere the Earth continues, in wind, in stone, in silence. At this point, there's no longer even a question of where you are. There's only the slow understanding that you've been everywhere all along. Not consciously, not intentionally, but by design, the universe's design. A design that never wastes, never forgets, only recycles. Your form has vanished, your cells, long since broken, your bones, crumbled, even the memories of your face, your voice, your movement, they've all faded from the world's mind. And yet, here you are, settled in the dust on a windowsill, lifted into the sky as a molecule of vapor, buried deep in the roots of a tree whose leaves turn golden every fall. It does not know you, but it carries you. You were never meant to remain whole. That was never the point. The beauty of your form was not in its permanence, but in its impermanence. Your structure was only ever temporary, a scaffolding for experience. For a little while, your atoms got to move in the shape of a person, and then they were set free. Here's a quietly astonishing thought. Some of the atoms in your body are older than Earth itself. They predate continents, predate oceans, predate breath. They were born in collapsing stars, scattered across galaxies, and pulled into the nebula that became our solar system. From there, they formed planets, formed oceans, formed life, and eventually, they formed you. Now, in this last phase of return, they simply continue. You are dust. But dust with a history, and dust with a future. Some of your particles will outlive the planet. They will be caught in air, in rock, in liquid, until the sun swells and the Earth is consumed. And even then, your atoms will not die. They'll drift into new formations, new beginnings. 1,000 years from now, someone may pick up a stone and hold it in their palm. It may have a smooth face, a quiet weight, and somewhere inside that stone is a trace of you. Not in a mystical sense. Not as a ghost, but as a structural truth. Because stones, like people, are made of stories. Not ones we can read, but ones we carry. Even after all this time, you're still participating in the breath of trees, in the mineral content of rivers, in the gentle arc of decay and regrowth that defines the Earth's rhythm. You've joined the cycles that do not stop, that never sleep, that never call attention to themselves, and never need to, because they just are. The cycle of nitrogen, feeding leaves and lungs. The cycle of water, moving through cloud and bone. The cycle of carbon, your old companion, now dissolved into the silence of everything. And still, there are mysteries. Scientists study these cycles, but there's always more they can't explain. Why some substances linger longer than others? Why decomposition is slower in some bodies than others, even in identical environments? Why remnants of identity, hair, pigment, fragments of DNA, sometimes defy all expectation? Some bodies mummify in desert heat. Others vanish entirely in swamps, leaving not even bones. Some become fossilized, others leave only a pale outline in the soil, a kind of ghost in reverse. Even death is inconsistent, even loss is varied. But in every case, the body continues, not in memory, but in motion, in subtle shifts, in invisible migrations, in the slow, vast dance of energy and mass. And eventually, all these scattered particles, the ones that were once you, become part of the future. of roads, of roots, of rain, and maybe in time, part of another person. Because atoms don't stay loyal, they don't hold grudges, they don't mourn, they simply move. And through that movement, something beautiful happens. You become available to everything, to the future you'll never meet, to the people you'll never know, to the stories you'll never hear. And even if no one speaks your name again, they'll still be using you, breathing you, drinking you, building lives with you. You are not preserved. You are not kept. You are given back. There is no longer a single point where we can say, this was the end. Because the end was never a moment. It was a long, slow unfolding. A letting go that happened in thousands of quiet stages, each softer than the last. And now, you are no longer becoming. You are simply being, in all the places where your parts have scattered, in every direction, through every element. You're not floating above this world. You are within it. You've become the background hum in the machinery of nature. A ghost only in the loosest sense. Not something watching, but something used. You no longer remember anything. But memory, as it turns out, isn't required for contribution. The nitrogen that once flowed through your muscles now nourishes a sapling. The carbon from your breath may rest in an animal's bone. The calcium from your teeth might someday settle into the shell of a tiny ocean creature. Drifting silently beneath the surface, you are not whole, but you are everywhere. And so the cycle, the story, the great natural exchange of life goes on. Your name may be gone, your face forgotten, but your matter, the real part of you, has simply become part of what allows things to continue. There is no celebration here, no ceremony, just process, elegant, slow, complete. And as you float in air and fall in rain and soak into soil, you pass through places where life is happening, where others laugh and weep and dream, never knowing that you are part of it. But that's okay. You've done what you were meant to do. You returned. Not in grandeur, not in light, but in utility, in inclusion. It is the quietest form of survival, not living on, but giving forward. And in that, you are infinite. So now, there's nothing more to become, nothing more to release. You have given yourself back to the world in full. You've passed through transformation, through collapse, through softness, through silence. And now you're just here, as still as dust on moonlit windows, as present as dew in morning grass, as weightless as mist that curls through forest air before sunrise. No longer contained by shape, no longer pressed into names or roles or rules, just dispersed, and somehow more whole than you ever were in life. Because everything that was once yours, your minerals, your molecules, your memory of breath, now belongs to everything, to the root systems beneath us, to the oceans beyond us, to the stars above us whose atoms you once carried, and now return to. And here in this hush, there are no expectations, no stories left to finish, no thoughts asking to be held. Only release, only ease. You've been through every stage, every soft undoing, every quiet redistribution, and now you rest in everything, as everything, for everything. That's all for tonight. Let your mind keep floating or drift into sleep. I'll be here again next time.